Good afternoon. Welcome to Healing the Brokenhearted. I'm Dale Pugh. That's Wes Ragsdale. And this is part two of what's going to be a mini part series on the healing of the brokenhearted. We've talked about a lot of things on this show. We just finished a month about Christmas because we were in December. But Wes and I both thought, go back to the beginning. So if you're watching this today for the first time, please go back and watch number one. This one's going to be number two, and we're going to start numbering them, healing the brokenhearted, and they'll be in numbers. So, Wes, why don't you go ahead and pick up where you left off last Monday, and we will continue on with the healing the brokenhearted.
I will. And I'm now going to talk publicly about things that happened to me that caused me to be the broken man, the broken-hearted man that I was. What happened is that at the age of 16, my home life got so bad that and I didn't talk about this for years because my parents were still alive and I didn't want to embarrass them. But
Mm-hmm.
they didn't know this. They nobody knew this. But for me, my home life was really bad. They didn't think anything about it because it's the way they were raised. But
Mm.
it was I was beaten a lot and so forth. But I won't go into all the gory details. But the point is, at the age of 16, it got so bad that I was for 3 months. I would lay awake at night trying to figure out how to kill both of them without going to jail,
Ay, ay, ay.
and I couldn't. And I realized that I couldn't. And then through a unique set of circumstances, they must have known something because they got a hold of my Uncle Galen. We were living in Springfield, Missouri, and he was in St. Louis at that time with his wife, Janine. And somehow, for some reason, they all cooperated and decided that I'd be better off leaving home and going to live with him in St. Louis,
Mm.
which is what happened. And I'm telling you, I was ecstatic. I could not wait to get out of there.
Oh, thank God.
So I went to St. Louis and I lived with Galen and his wife for, I believe it was 3 months in his basement. And when I say basement, it was just a wide open basement and they had a bed down there. And then Janine's parents, Lauren and Wooten and his wife, were pastoring the Assembly of God Church there in the area, and their daughter, and somehow they all got together and decided that I should be living with the Wootens. So then they moved me over there with the pastor, Lauren Wooten and his wife, and I attended a Christian school, and there were only 12 in the class, and I'll tell you how bad I was. I didn't really care, and out of a class of 12, I graduated last because I
Ay,
just
ay,
didn't I
ay.
just didn't really care anymore. I was really screwed up, but I didn't know that. In other words, I'm living like that, and I didn't realize what it all was. I had no idea, and yet the call of God was there. And what happened is that I ended up they needed a speaker to go out to California and preach in my stepsister's church. So they decided to send me. To this day, I don't know why they did, but they did. So I flew out there, and then there was an airplane strike while I was there, and then I got notified that that I was being drafted, and I
Wow.
had to get back to St. Louis. So I had to take a bus, and we got out over the desert, and the air conditioning went out on the bus. And I mean, it was miserable. It was so miserable. By the time we got to St. Louis and I took my shoes off and my socks, the bottom layer of my feet peeled off because of what had happened on the bus. And I went in and I got drafted. And they sent me to Fort Riley, Kansas. And I had believed that God wouldn't allow me to go in the army. That's what I really had thought because after all, I'm called. I'm not going to go in the army. So I'd been there about 4 weeks, and my parents came to visit. I'll never forget this. We were standing under this tree, and so my mother says, "So how do you like the army?" I said, "I'm not in it." She said, what do you mean you're not in it? I said, no, this is just a test of my faith. I really said that. I mean, I
You
was
talk about
really,
denial.
yeah, I
You're
was really
standing there
messed
with
up.
a green uniform on. I'm not
Yeah,
in the army.
yeah, exactly. I was really messed up. And the very next week, they called my name out to go forward to the drill sergeant, and I was scared to death of what in the world did I do? Because if you got called out, that meant you did something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I got up there to him and said, "You got to go see the captain." And I went, "Oh, I'm in really bad trouble because you don't. Nobody went to see the captain." So I went over to see the captain. And he said, uh, "Private Ragsdale, you don't belong here." And I thought, "Oh, thank God they're going to let me out." He said, "Your test scores are too high, so we're going to make an officer out of you." And before I could stop myself, I said, "Well, what if I don't want to be one?" And then for the next 10 minutes, my ears were pinned back with words. I don't even remember all of them. The horrible things I got called. I mean, every name. And oh, he was mad that I said anything like that. So they sent me to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, in the artillery, and my claim to fame at the artillery school there is that I spent more time on what they call the Jake walk, meaning the punishment walk, than any other person that ever graduated from there.
Ay, ay, ay.
I had to go twice a week because they always found something wrong with me. And they also were trying, I realized right away they were trying to get me to quit. And when they tried to get me to quit, that's when my type personality came. I said, they're not going to get me to quit. I'm going to graduate. So I got all the way to being ready to graduate, and I decided, okay, I've proved that I've got it. And I was literally on my way over to the office to tell them that I was going to resign. And a runner met me on the way. He said, "Oh, I'm glad I found you. Your parents are on the way." I said, "My parents? My parents have not ever come to see me do anything." And he said, "Yeah, they're on their way to see you graduate." And because they were coming, I went ahead and graduated. That's the only reason I did. And I'll never forget ever that on our last walk over to the where we were going to have our bars put on, our drill sergeant was running up and down the line, screaming at us, calling us every name in the book, and we were a bunch of lyriat, all this stuff that he just horrible stuff. And we go in, and we get our bars, and we come out. And when I came out the side door, the first person to meet us was this drill sergeant who had been screaming at us, and he went like this and said, "Good afternoon, sir." And I went, what in the world? What's he doing? He wouldn't follow me anywhere. If he had a chance, he'd kill me, you know? And he would have, because, you don't become a leader just because you have a bar on, and you don't become the head of your home just because you're a man. You have to earn it. And that's another story by itself. So that happened. And they sent me, I had orders for Korea, for Vietnam. I had orders for Vietnam. And I was living in St. Louis. I got in the used to be TWA jet in my uniform, and I flew to Seattle, Washington. And I got out, and I was on my way over to go to Vietnam, and they grabbed me and they said, "No, sir, you got to go over there." And I went over there, and all the officers from my unit in Fort Riley, Kansas, were there because they were sending young lieutenants for 1 year of seasoning at a stateside camp. And in Fort Riley, Kansas, we were an Honest John Rocket Battalion, which was the first rocket that the U.S. military had. And we used to call it Point and Hope because it had no guidance system on it, and we never knew where it was going to go. But it also carried a nuke warhead, or could.
Wow.
And then he said, so the day that the colonel was teaching us about how to arm a nuke warhead, it was a dummy, but he was showing us. When he got through, he said, "Anybody got any questions?" I said, "Yes, sir, I do." I said, "This thing only goes 22 miles. And if we shoot a nuke warhead, what are we supposed to do?" He said, "Duck," because we would have been dead. But that's how I ended up in South Korea instead of Vietnam, which is probably why I'm alive today. And how much time I got left?
You got about 2 minutes.
Oh, good. So I got to South Korea, and they wouldn't tell us what we were there for. They took us up to the unit, and Colonel Byerly, that was his name. He's passed away now, so I can use his name. And He brought us in and he said, "Gentlemen, I can't talk to you because you only have a secret clearance. You've got to have a top secret encrypted clearance before I can talk to you. So it's going to take 2 or 3 weeks." And it did. And then he brought us in and he started assigning everybody to their jobs. You'll be head of this group and head and all these different things. And everybody was assigned but me. And when everybody was gone, he shut the door and he locked it. And he looked at me and he said, "Lieutenant, I'm sure you know that in the normal battalion, Army battalion, and so forth, you have the four shops: the S1, S2, S3, and S4. S1 is personnel, S2 is intelligence, and S3 is operations, and S4 is supply and maintenance. And they're all headed by captains. But in an Honest John Rocket Battalion, we combine the S3 shop and the S2 shop, the intelligence shop and the operations into one, and it's a job for a major. You are now my S3." And I went, "Excuse me?" He said, "It's only because we don't have any more officers. They're all in Vietnam. So I know you're only a lieutenant, but you are now my S3. And he said, and I can talk about this today because it's declassified. He said, "And another thing is, if you tell anyone what I'm about to tell you next, if I ever hear it that you did in one word of it, I'll see that you're put in the stockade for the rest of your life." And I said, "Yes, sir."
Well,
He
that
said,
is a good note to end on because
"Okay, and I'll
the
tell you the rest
Bible,
of it tomorrow."
the Bible says that the promotion does not come from the east or the west, but from the Lord.
That's
So
it.
this is a real, true story. So
Yes,
the next week, Wes is going to continue. We're going to pick it up right whenever he got the S3 assignment as a major, even though he was a lieutenant,
that's
and see
it.
how the Lord worked in his life to bring him where he could help others get help from God. So
Amen.
everybody continue to ask the Lord to show you how he wants to help you in Jesus' name.